Going from freelance photographer to six-figure-a-month business owner, we're diving into the creative entrepreneurship journey of Maxwell Müller. Max, for the viewers that have been following our podcast, they've seen 12, 13 episodes. In their eyes, you've made it, right? You've got a six-figure-a-month business. Maybe they don't know, but you've got a great fiance. You just bought a house in Florida a year ago. You get to travel. You're doing everything you love to do. But where did you start? What led you to create this business?
What led me to create this business? I've been able to create, the essence of creative entrepreneurship is something that I just tried to live by in all ways. Like, creative entrepreneurship is not just I'm a creative, I'm a graphic designer, I'm a video editor, but it's I look at life with creative solutions, not just the typical way of going about things, but oftentimes the opposite of the typical way. So maybe it's the time of day in which I'm working, or the way that I structure my team, or the expectations for myself within my role. I've always just kind of looked at it a little bit differently. And I think that's been a huge part of my professional career, but also just like my whole life. I've always been, I can think back to my childhood where I was called the what if kid. Both my parents and even my teachers would always ask or always identify me as like, oh, there's the what if kid again. Which now that I think about it, it's kind of screwed up for teachers to say that about a kid. But but it's true. I would always, and to this day, I'm always asking myself, what if, and sometimes to a fault. That what if really leads my curiosity of like, well, what if it was this way? What if when I was first getting started with video editing, now we have a pretty large team. If we're looking at video editing and first getting started, what if I could provide a better service, an easier service for our clients, a faster way to get them results? What if I could structure my team in a way that allows me to only do the things that I love to do? Ultimately, right? Not that I'm going to implement it right now and be exactly where I want to be, which is the cold hard reality of life. Right? It takes work, even though these, most videos that you find online are like passive income. Yeah. Like, fuck that. Even now getting a little bit into real estate is, people who say the real estate's passive income is they're fucking lying through their teeth. It's a business model. It takes time. And ultimately it can become more passive as you gain more money and can hire out more team members. But that's like any business model. So, man, I really just came from a place of curiosity, and I still lead the way with everything I do in curiosity. I really try to back up my curiosity by knowing, I could probably go faster by myself, but further with others. I actually heard that from a team member of ours a couple of years ago. And when I heard that, I was like, yeah, that's something that I've really lived by for a long time is I can do the thing now, but the time that it takes for me to discuss something with maybe a team member or a potential hire might take me more time, but man, that will get me and us further. And that's critical. So backing up this curiosity with this approach of people has just been not a mantra, but it's just been a methodology of, how I like to approach business, and not to mention just like fucking work and like, not to promote like hustle culture, but to also realize that when you're getting something off the ground, it's going to take more energy. It's going to take a lot more energy, a lot more sacrifice. Now I'm in a pretty cool position to be flexible with my work. I can take off kind of whenever I want to. I can travel from wherever, and we work with people all across the globe now, not just the US, Europe, Australia, Canada, everywhere in between. And that type of flexibility has been really incredible for me to finally achieve. I was able to do that probably after the first year, because that first year was head down, get after it. I wasn't dating anyone. I wasn't really taking much time, maybe family holidays. I remember Thanksgiving was questionable. I was like, am I going to go home for Thanksgiving? I don't know. And I basically scraped up whatever money I had at the time and bought a flight and made it back. And that was kind of a big deal. Some people just take that for granted. That was a big deal to take time away from the business and money away from what I was doing. And just for the record, like I say this in other videos, but I didn't come from big money. I don't have any investors, at least not yet. And that just takes a matter of being, again, creatively entrepreneurial, looking at business in not a way of like, oh, I need all this money to get after my passions, but rather, how can I start to serve people and develop a type of profit, even if it's just me in the beginning, and then turn that profit into reinvesting back into the business. Maybe it is hiring someone or paying for some type of AI service that can help save me time or provide better results for my clients. And then that leads to more profit. And then, ultimately I've just been rocking that equation for quite some time. And now, we have a pretty big team and get to work with hundreds of people across the globe. And that's pretty incredible.
So let's get back to, before that first year, right? I know for a while when we met, you were doing freelance photography for surf brands specifically in South Florida, right? How?
Yeah, all sorts of different things. I was doing surf brands. I was working with country clubs. I was working with attorneys. I was just like freelancing, meaning I was just trying to, a lot of freelancers will probably resonate with this is you're working on your passion projects that you love to do. And then you have a percentage of your work that's paying for the bills. Right. And that was the attorneys and, just random businesses that I would create content for. And I was the one hands on the camera, photo, video.
And what led you to, you were making, I know when we met, you were doing the freelance stuff, you were making a good living, right? You were, you had your own business freelance, but what sparked you to kind of take it to the next level? Like when did you decide, all right, I don't want to work with all these random brands. I want to focus on providing serious value, having long-term clients, and scaling a business?
Yeah. And to that point is you can be a freelancer and work with clients on a long-term basis for sure. And you can also go more of the business route or agency route if you'd like. But that was a huge fork in the road for me is I had this opportunity to take it to the next level one way or the other. The first way being as a freelancer, I was actually being pitched this type of job opportunity for I have connections in the sailing world. So there's what's called the America's Cup team, which is the most prestigious sailing regatta in the world by far. I believe it's also one of the oldest sports events in the history of mankind. It was it created back War. Right. Well, I'm pretty sure it was the Vikings who were actually started that or something like that. Yeah. But the America's Cup needed a new photographer. And I was like, ooh, that could be a huge stepping stone in this type of sports content. I'm just an active dude and I love that type of content. How can I, level myself up? Maybe I'll take this job opportunity where I can, go film some of the world's best athletes, get into the Olympics, look at, taking these profiles. I was looking at, photographers like Annie Leibovitz and, maybe Chris Burkhardt or Paul Nicklin and these incredible photographers who are individuals. They always had their hands on the camera. And I thought that was pretty fucking cool, but that's just one route. The other route was more of an agency approach, more of a business opportunity. And the plus side of having a business opportunity is I didn't have to be the person hands-on, literally hands-on the camera, right? That was really intriguing to me because I ultimately heard just some random social media video, kind of like this, is I saw a video where someone was explaining, what if your business worked as a wheel, where a freelancer, for example, if they want that wheel to move, that business to run, if they want that wheel to move, then they got to push it. And they got to keep pushing it. They got to keep showing up. If Paul Nicklin or, Annie Leibovitz, if they want that business to run, guess who's got to be literally hands-on that wheel? It's them over and over and over again. And then the guy asked the question, what if you could push it once and then it spins by itself and then it just keeps on spinning? And then you push it again and it goes a little faster, right? And it's just continuing to spin over and over and over again. And then what if it gets to the point where you're pushing it and every time you push it, it's gotten to that speed where when you push it, you actually can't push it hard enough yourself that when you push it, you're actually going to slow that thing down. And that's ultimately the position that I've gotten to today is I've been able to create this type of business, which is really exciting just to share because hopefully this inspires others to maybe do the same, where I can't go into some of the day-to-day tasks of our team because I will literally be slowing down the whole process, which if you can take that one step further is that's how you can impact way more people. Again, I can go fast by myself, but I can go further with others. It's just a core belief that I have. And so that was the route that I ended up taking. Now you can make the argument that, Annie Leibovitz, Paul Nicklin, Chris Burkhardt, they're reaching millions of people with their photos. They're impacting all these. Yes. But I'm talking about not just the number of people you reach, but the depth in which you impact those folks. And that's where I know that you can do much more as you go further with other people. And man, that wheel of business can be one way or the other. So ultimately I went down that route of developing a business. It was just me. And I knew that ultimately I would scale, but man, I was doing all the video editing. I was doing all the graphic design. I was doing all the client work. I ended up hiring my sister, funny enough. Entrepreneurship 101, start with what you got. I had my sister there who was available, and she ended up handling some of the client communication. Again, going back to that equation, a little bit of profit went into the bank. A little more profit. Ooh, now we can afford to hire someone. Hired a little bit of talent. More profit. Now I get to work on a little less, but more of what I want to do. And then another hire. A little less of what I have to do, more of what I want to do. And then that, again, you multiply that over the last 5-6 years, and here we are today.
So when you were getting started, tell me about getting that first client, right? Because you had clients when you were doing the freelance stuff, but when you decided to go the agency model and you got a brand to hire you to do their video editing, graphic design, content strategy, essentially. Were you scared, nervous, anxious, overwhelmed? How did that feel?
I was fired up. Because here's the thing is, if it was a cold, hard stranger, I probably would have been more nervous, but I always recommend to people, like, if you're first getting started, find someone in your network. It doesn't have to be a direct friend or a direct family member or neighbor. It could be one-off from them. It could be, hey, neighbor, or hey, friend, do you know someone who's looking for this? Now, fortunately for me, I was able to find just an old college buddy who needed some help growing his brand at the time. And I was like, hey, man, I see what you're doing. Could I help you? This is something that I'm interested in getting into. Now, ultimately, he paid me dirt cheap, nothing to get going. But man, I was fired up because that was the opportunity for me to be like, I'm going to take that route. I'm going to go down that direction, start creating content, turn that profit into a more profitable business, and ultimately, start to delegate one day. That was the vision was there. So yeah, man, I was fired up. And as I recommend to everyone, tap into your network. It's more expansive than you think. And again, it's only expansive if you ask, do you know someone? Which also takes away the pressure from that person to be like, oh, they're trying to sell me on something. Like, I didn't go to that buddy and just be like, let me work for you. It was, hey, I'm looking to do this thing. Do you know someone? I kind of see that you're doing this too. So maybe you know other people that are trying to do the same thing. He's like, yeah, but actually come work for me. Perfect. Right.
When you first started working for that friend of yours, you didn't really have your offer fine-tuned yet, right? And that was probably a good experience to really fine-tune, like, what can I offer people? Like, what can my elevator pitch be, right? Because it's not just like, I'll edit your videos, because there are different types of videos. Are you editing vlogs for people, talking heads, shorts, reels, etc.?
So it was so complicated. It's like, in the moment I was thinking, I have a great offer. I'm going to blow up his brand, right? I'm going to create all this content. We're doing photos, videos, graphic design, social media management. We're going to post it across all of his pages. We're going to improve his website. We're going to get him into collaborations with other. Hold on. I just named 5 different businesses right there. Graphic design is a business of its own. Video editing is a business of its own. Shooting, production, collaboration, that's PR, right? Like, I was combining all these things into what I thought was this juicy offer, right? This elevator pitch. It wasn't. Like, no, that's just you trying to get the ball started. And I was pretty naive at the time. And I think there's a beauty to being naive when you're first getting started, because you just fucking take that step forward. You're like, I don't know what kind of, lions and tigers are in the trees around me. But hey, I see a step forward, and I'm going to take that step forward. I just was interviewing someone recently, and they used the example of headlights.
I love that example.
Like, if you want to drive across the country at night, you don't need to have everything lit up in front of you. You don't have to have street lights the whole way through. You just have your headlights going. You can get across the whole country by just having your headlights showing directly what's in front of you. If there's something in the way, if there's a fucking angry bear in the way or some crazy dude with a chainsaw, sweet. Swerve around that dude, right? Like get around whatever problem is in your way. And again, that's a bit of naive playing a crucial part into entrepreneurs' success. And I see that not just with myself, but for hundreds of entrepreneurs that we work with.
Drive across the country, right? Like if you were to leave Florida driving to California, when you leave your house, you're not thinking there might be an accident in Nevada that you might hit, right? You're just like, I'm driving, to this point and then to that point. You're just taking the next step that you can see in front of you. And I think it's really easy for entrepreneurs these days to think, well, what if I have this massive issue when I'm making $1 million a month? It's like, well, first make $1,000 a month and then make five, right? Like take those little steps and you'll get to that point and figure out those problems along the way.
And that should hopefully be a little, breath of fresh air for those people who are super tactical and analytical. Definitely that's a part of who I am. I'm always like creating equations and spreadsheets and whatnot, but but hopefully that's a breath of fresh air for those who maybe are like, oh, well, when we get to that problem, or dude, take a breath, look at what's in your headlights right now, deal with what's in your headlights and just keep on doing that. Of course, pull up your maps and take a look at what might be ahead, but actually take action on what's in your headlights for now.
What were some of those like major milestones that you hit? Like obviously getting a first client when you really switched to this, like, all right, I'm going to be a business and not just a freelancer. That first client was like a stepping stone, but were you fired up when you hit 10K a month? Like what were those like, wow, I did this. Like I'm going to go on vacation, right? Like what were those really awesome points for you?
Yeah, man, I just get chills down my back because it feels like yesterday, even though it was, half a decade ago. And a couple of milestones that really stuck out to me were, number one, getting my first 2 clients. Not just the first one, because the first one was kind of like a luck type of thing. But once I got my first 2 clients, it was like, we have something going here, right? After the first 2 clients, it was not 10K a month, because I thought 10K was just kind of I don't know, it was. So here's the thing, 10K, you still got expenses. So you're not making 10K. For whatever reason, hitting 15K in revenue was really nice. I forget exactly what my profit margins were back then, but I remember having enough money where I was like, oh my God, I'm breathing, right? Now I'm finally getting into a profitable business model using my passion, which is huge, right? Because I mean, by the way, I was coming from finance originally. We haven't talked about that yet, but I was coming from a finance career where I was going to be pushing numbers, working in a fucking cubicle, right? Or working for some big bank off of New York, Wall Street. That's just not what I wanted. So hitting 15K and being able to breathe with a profitable business based on my passions was huge for me. I would say then was a matter of time. Maybe, 4-6 months later, somewhere in that time period, that's when I started to actually hire out more talent to scale our business. And that was huge, because then I started doing less of the things that I had to do, more of what I wanted to do. Then we started to get up to, 35, 50K a month. That's always nice. You're like, oh, I'm fucking doing my thing, man. Let's go. And then, yeah, of course, getting huge celebrities to come work with us. That was a huge milestone. And I think definitely hitting the $100,000 a month mark is just kind of in the business entrepreneurial world, that's a really great milestone to hit, because you're scaling. You ain't doing 100K a month by yourself. That means you really are onto something great. And now we're going, multiple 6 figures a month. We're aiming to do even bigger numbers within the next 12 months. So pumped to just continue, looking back on how we can impact more people. I'm not here just to talk about the money. I'm here to talk about passions turning into money, and ultimately that money turning into more impact, because money is just power, man. And that's ultimately what we're here to do. And so our mission statement is to amplify the voices of those making a positive impact.
Was there ever a time where you wanted to quit?
I laugh because hell yes. Multiple times. Scary times, before getting started, I wanted to quit.
Yeah.
After getting started, it wasn't a professional thing. It was a personal thing, just personal shit going on in life. You're like, fuck, man, I'm overwhelmed. Like, I haven't been checking myself lately. I haven't been prioritizing my health, physical health, mental health, relationship health. Yeah, some dark times, like questioning the world, as like a young man. I know a lot of entrepreneurs get started when they're, upwards of 40, and there's some incredible statistics behind, the most successful entrepreneurs getting started past 40. But what about the younger ones who are trying to figure out life and they don't know what the world really entails? What about just reality? Like, at least for me, I had a really, maybe it's because I'm a what if guy, but what if reality is different than what I think it is? What if there is more out there? Like, I wouldn't really call myself too religious based. I would definitely call myself more spiritual. But what about those other outside factors that are way, way, way bigger than who we are? I'll throw a crazy stat out there, which threw me off my rocker. There are more solar systems that we are finding in the universe than there are grains of sand on the beach across the world. What the fuck? And we think there's no aliens out there? Like, here we are just one sun. We are one Earth from one sun, and there are more solar systems out. Take a second to think about that, right? And if given our timeline of things compared to suns that are way bigger, way older than ours, right? Way smaller, different. I mean, it just makes you stop and think for a second. Maybe smell the roses for a hot second. And I'm just saying that because I was so head down in my business where I was like, I'd got to do the thing, day to day. I mean, I would look, and to this day, sometimes I look at the date and I'm like, it is the 11th of the month. And I'm looking at this date thinking, all right, we're nearly 50% done with the month. What is our revenue going to be? What is our client success? What is our churn going to be for both clients and team members? What is our right? I'm thinking about all these numbers on a day-to-day basis and like waking up, getting on the hamster wheel, doing it over again. But what happens when you take a step off the hamster wheel? As maybe just as a young man, that was something that I really had to deal with. And yeah, it got me into a really dark place. Just questioning and not having answers. The unknown is so scary. Yeah, it's strange. And taking that time for personal development and not just, getting fit, meditating, the classic personal development, spirituality wise, what was I doing? Relationships wise, what was I doing? Kind of finding my place in the world bigger than the biz. And that really only came after I had the luxury to think bigger. Because I mean, I was just straight up broke. Like I didn't have that luxury to be like, let me think about the greater good. No, I needed to think about where I'm going to get my next set of groceries and in the cheapest way possible. And like what budget I have for that. So yeah, not the sexiest topic, but a real one.
Yeah. I mean, I think the headlight metaphor can be used for that too, right? Like, you can't control those huge thoughts, but like looking at the maps, they're important to think about every once in a while and consider, but then look at the headlights. Like, all right, I can't control how many universes there are, but, or galaxies, but I can control what I'm doing in this world and how I'm affecting people around me in this world.
Dude, let me just go off that for a second, which is, finding the right friends. Because when you get into those deeper talks, you tend to realize who really cares about your health. Those are the friends that really should be held on to, because at that period of time, I had two clear types of friends. I remember one friend specifically, I was trying to like share these stresses with. I was like, listen, man, like here's some deep thoughts I'm having, just questions that I have. I'm not really finding any answers. He's like, dude, get it together. Like what do you say? Like, get together. You're acting crazy, right? I don't think that's acting crazy for questioning real science and real data that's out there. I don't think it's crazy to question religion. I think that's very healthy to do. And then I had another set of friends, thankfully, more friends, which I wasn't going to every single one of my friends saying this, but just a few more who I wanted to bounce this off of. And clear difference. Dude, I've been thinking about the same thing. You know what? I never really thought about that. Let's talk about it. You know, I can't talk about it right now, but I appreciate you coming to me. What if we hang out this Saturday and grab a coffee or grab some lunch and just chat? Dude, that's a totally different type of friend. And especially when you're in this type of entrepreneurial journey, you typically lose a lot of friends. Like frankly, I was a very social guy in high school and college. And after that, when I started my business, I let a lot of those relationships go because people were just trying to go towards other things that I didn't want to go towards. And that narrowed my friendship pool to a much, much tighter pool, much, much smaller amount of fish in that pool. And yeah, I mean, geez, you got to be able to pick the right people and audit them. And also not to just be like, I'm not vibing with what he's saying, I'm not going to talk to them again. Bring it up. Be like, I don't appreciate that. Like, I'm looking for this type of support. And sometimes they'll flip and they'll be like, listen, man, I'm sorry. I was being an asshole. I got my own shit going on and I just couldn't deal with this at the time. Fortunately, some of those friends weren't saying that. So guess what ultimately happened? You push them away. You have to.
Yeah. I've had very similar to you, right? Like I've got friends that I know I can go talk to about the weird or the out there or the, emotional stuff. And then I've got friends where I'm like, I can talk to you about, golf or surfing, but it's going to stay at that surface level. We're great friends, but there's a depth that some people can't get to. And I had a conversation with a mentor of mine. And he's one of those people that I can go to and we can talk about anything out there, universes, depression, whatever it may be. And, I asked him, I was like, why can I have such great conversations with some people? And then other people, it's like pulling teeth to even just get them to like, are you happy right now? And he said, literally some people are just, it's not a choice. They're incapable of getting to that depth and it has nothing to do with them. It's just, some people can do it. Some people can't. It has nothing to do with the actual person. And that was a cool realization for me to kind of take the blame off of certain friends where I'm like, why didn't you ask me why I was sad the other day? Right. And, realizing that like, oh, maybe they can't do that,
Sadness is such a, is such a unique conversation to go down. But I think that goes under the umbrella of just deeper talks in general. And I feel like if we're only at the surface level with people, like I'm not friends with people that I just have surface level conversations with. I call those acquaintances, right? Mm-hmm. And there's even people that I'm, not necessarily friends with that I can still have those deeper conversations with. It could be a random dude on an airplane. Like it could be whoever, right? And so if we're looking at, friendships and people that I consider my friends, at least for me, I don't know. I just have a different outlook on who I consider friends. And without a doubt, that's like, we got to be able to talk about the deep stuff. I don't want to have friendships that we can't talk about the deep stuff with. And we not just need to talk about the deep stuff, we also need to have a somewhat similar direction that we're heading towards. I'm not talking about I'm Republican, you're Democrat, or vice versa. I'm not talking about I see this being the right world in front of us. We can totally have different viewpoints on that. But when it comes down to the values that we have, maybe in regards to how we treat people or how we treat ourselves, those that maybe it's a matter, for example, growth. I value growth. Like I know that if you're not growing, you're dying. People that are just like, oh, I'm just going to coast for a little bit. Bullshit. Like you ain't coasting. I just heard someone say the only way to coast is to go downhill. So if you think you're coasting, that means that you're going downhill, right? So I value growth, and I really believe that that's a way of life, and that's something that I'm always looking for in myself and as well as my friends who I associate myself with, because we all know you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So who are those 5 people? Who are those 15 people, right? Who are you hanging with that's averaging you? That shit matters.
Got a little bit away from the entrepreneurship talk there, but I think that's not completely unrelated, right? I think
No, it's
a big part of entrepreneurship, and whether it's entrepreneurship or just kind of living your life differently, there's value in introspection and self-reflection, and getting, people hate to do it, but like sitting alone with your own thoughts, that can be tough, but it's, especially in entrepreneurship, that's something that happens a lot and leads to growth. And
one thing, just going off that, Jack, one thing that I just find really helpful for myself is, I actually just talked about this recently. When I think about how I approach growth, I usually have questions in my head, ideas that I can't really hone and finalize yet. And you just mentioned sitting with your own thoughts is important. But when I sit with my own thoughts, I almost imagine, what if future Max was here? What would he be saying? Like, what would his guidance, what would his advice be to me right now? That just works so well because it really clears up to identify the things that really matter and push away the things that don't matter. It's like, well, listen, let's put aside money for a second and think about relationships. Let's put aside thinking too fast, which is important for business, but pulling back a little bit on the speed to almost launch ourselves forward for a further success rate. Meaning, what can we do now that would allow us to, yes, benefit short term, but always benefit long term? Like if you're doing something that's only working in the short term and not going to work in the long term, we got to take a different approach. We got to reassess the situation. And that's something that I just find really helpful, is to ask myself, like, what would future Max recommend and suggest here? It's always like going for that long-term approach. I'm trying to think of an example. An example might be recently we're going through this this incredible offer that we're looking to launch for just people to more easily get started with their brand, start creating content without having to put so much money up front or so much time up front. And it's really taking a good shift on the back end with our team members. Good amount of reluctancy to change from some team members. But we know that change is, yes, going to be a little bit harder to deal with in the short term, but the long term is going to be so crucial. We're talking about doing more advertising for our clients. We're talking about allowing more of a placement for higher leadership positions within companies to take away some of those more important strategy tasks from our clients. So short-term wise, it's going to suck a little bit. We're going to have to go through things that we've never gone through before. But long-term, it's really going to help not just our clients, but even our employees get paid more money because they're able to work with brands on a longer-term basis and get paid accordingly with that growth, which is huge.
So one thing that we haven't really talked about in terms of the business, right? It's like, obviously, you had the video photo background that translated not easily, but that translated well into working with brands and then helping them do what you had been doing and figuring out how to do that at scale. How'd you learn how to manage a team? Because that does not come, it may come naturally, but that's a tough thing to learn how to do.
Bird by bird. Bird by bird. So there's this book called Bird by Bird. And the premise is that this young boy who was kind of like me, who didn't really care about school that much, but he had this giant test the next day on birds, and he had not studied at all for this. And he was completely overwhelmed. He was going to get in trouble if he didn't do well on the test. So there he was sitting on his living room floor with all of these books around him about birds that the test was about. And, he was like on the verge of tears and dad goes over and is like, what's going on, son? And he's like, oh, I have this big test tomorrow and I know I'm going to get in trouble if I don't do well. How could I possibly, do well for this test? And the dad goes, bird by bird. It's like, you just got to learn bird by bird, learn about each one at a time. And over time, you'll start to learn about the whole picture, everything that you could possibly need to know for this test. And that's kind of how I've approached this type of management, but I really don't like calling it management because I rarely manage people. I'll check in, sure, but it's more of a leadership position where, and you know this because you work for us, but it's certainly more of a, hey, we'll get started on something together, but I'm going to give you a ton of freedom. Like I remember this morning, I checked in with you on something that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. I was like, hey man, where are we at with this? Right? I'm not like over your shoulder each day, checking in on everything that you're doing. That's just not how I want. That's not how I would want to be, led or managed. So I don't do that for other people. But certainly one thing to note is that I've kind of always been a bit of a leader. Like I think back onto my, childhood of playing sports. Like I was always a center mid in soccer because I was a great communicator with the team. I wasn't the leading goal scorer. I wasn't, the best player. I was rarely the best player. I was a really good player, but I was never the best. But one thing that I was always good with is the people on the team. And so I was oftentimes the captain, even though I wasn't the best player. And I think that was just a matter of, speaking to people in the way that I would want to be spoken to, which is just the freaking golden rule, right? But rarely do people actually go about that. And not to mention going a little bit more, right? Like people pay attention when you do that one extra step. So one of the values that we have with our company is 101% ownership, which entails I'm going to do everything that is expected of me and a little more. Because even in regards to just checking in with someone, making sure that they're okay, yeah, that maybe that's expected of you as a manager, but what else can you do? What's that one little bit that you can do? And that's probably what's led to, our team staying with us for years and years and years, and our leadership team being, great leaders themselves. Not to mention people just loving what they do. Yes, they get to work on cool projects, they get to work with cool brands, but it seems like from all the reports that we get, and not just, from what I've seen, but from what other people are telling me, the leaders reporting back to me is they love it. They really enjoy it. And that's a matter of listening and taking one step further.
Let's look into the future. You've got a wedding coming up.
Yeah.
And you're running a business and you're traveling and you just bought a house. You got a lot going on. How are you mentally wrapping your head around all of that, prioritizing business, fiance, wedding, travel, house, all,
yeah.
How do you compartmentalize all those things?
Yeah. Compartmentalizing is a word that I'm sure you're bringing up because we talk about it a lot in the business. Is everybody's got a lot going on. Like, even when you don't think you do, you're probably forgetting about a couple of things like, oh shit, when was the last time I actually talked with my mom or spoken to my sister or, my best friend? Oh shit, there's something that you're probably forgetting about. So everybody always has a lot going on, but compartmentalizing is a great way just to have those thoughts. It might be in the middle of working and you're like, oh my God, I'm grinding right now. I know I should call my sister. I haven't called her in forever. Compartmentalize. The way that I go about compartmentalizing is, okay, I need to do this thing and I'm going to do it at this specific time. Tonight at 6:45 p.m. It's in my calendar. I might even shoot her a quick text and be like, hey, are you good to talk at that time? And boom, right when I put it into my calendar, I live by my calendar. Right when I put it into my calendar, it's compartmentalized because I know that thing is entering my life. Not just an idea of a to-do that maybe someday I'll get to it, but that's just going to eat in my freaking, stress. But rather, this is going to happen at this time. Putting into a time block somewhere on your calendar, even if it's days from now, is going to give you so much more relaxation and avoid stress because it's actually entering your life. So that's the big thing. It's compartmentalizing. When you have a lot going on, and you want to prioritize it, either put it on the schedule or delete it. Be like, I'm not going to do that, right? And all of a sudden your stresses go away, or at least they're being managed in a realistic approach.
And now that you're you've got a fiance, Megan, you're getting married in September, you're still running a business. Does your forward thinking relationship mentality change the way you think about how you want to grow your business? Like, is getting married affecting how your long-term thinking relates to your business?
I've always said that business can never take away from family, and family can never take away from business. We've all seen that happen with top CEOs where their business goes to shit because they're focusing too much on the family, right? Or their family goes to shit because they're focusing too much on the business, right? That's just something that I think it's just a lack of prioritization given time, right? It's not that family is more important or business is more important. It's at which times is family more important? At which times is business more important, right? Now, there's always the caveat of emergencies. If you get that call, hey, I need you right now, right? Whether it's a business thing or a family thing, right? But generally speaking, you just can't let one affect the other. And that really comes down to looking at your time and being a bit strict with it. As we start to grow a bigger and bigger team, there's just expectations where some days I'm flexible to speak in the middle of the night. There's on the weekends, don't try to contact me on Sundays, for example. That's a hard day off, right? There were times where I used to work on Sundays, not happening anymore. But I think as I look forward, then you start to get into the picture of babies and kids, school, sports for them, outside curriculars. I just think it's not a matter of can I or can't I. It's how can I? How can I continue doing the business that I want while maintaining the family that I want? I think that's, again, going back to the essence of creative entrepreneurship, is how can I find a creative solution to solve this problem for me where everyone profits, where there's clear value exchange. I get value and they get value, not just one-sided, right? Tactically speaking there, I think it's a matter of who can I delegate this to, right? And for example, my mom was and is a huge inspiration to me because she started her own business, and that was a direct example of entrepreneurship from a very young age. And my mom wasn't always around, but she was always there for the things that mattered. And she was, yes, there were times where I kind of wished my mom was around a little more, but man, I respected the crap out of what she was doing, mainly because she was pursuing her passions. She loves what she does, and she was still there. If she wasn't there for those most important things, the graduation, the important soccer games, she wasn't at every soccer game, but she was at most of them, right? Especially the important ones. If she knew that it mattered, right? Or if she got wind from the coach that, hey, this is an important tournament that we have going on, she fucking made that happen. And I think that's kind of a good example, that we can take the good and the bad from our parents and learn not to do the bad things. But that was certainly one of the good things that I'll be implementing for sure.
Max, I want to leave the viewers with a nugget, right? If you could time travel 8 years ago, where was Max and what would you tell Max?
Well, first off, Max was all over the damn place. Physically, emotionally, just in all ways, all over the place, relationship wise. Patience, like balance the patience with the speed. Like, just take a breath. There's so much power in breathing. And I used to have a good bit of anger management issues, and breathe, man. Just relax your shoulders for a hot second. Just take a breath. Be patient. Only when you clearly see the goal that you go fucking hard at it and you implement with speed. But otherwise, be patient. I had the incredible privilege to be invited to this great white expedition where I went diving for 4 or 5 days with great whites off the coast of Mexico. And when I saw those massive, ancient species that are literally the size of a bus, they have 7 rows of teeth. And you see these gigantic white sharks swimming from the depths. They are going so slow, so patiently do they move until they see what they want. And once they see that bait, once they see that food, whatever it is that they want, with all of their energy, they go and attack. it is scary. It is also inspiring. It was the biggest takeaway that I had from watching those great white sharks was be very patient until you clearly see what you need to attack, and then give it all that you got. That could be applied to business. Be patient. If you don't know what it is yet, be patient until you know what it is, then fucking go hard. Family, right? Be patient. If you don't know what the problem is with the family, take a breath. And then you understand the problem. Okay, you have my full attention. You have my full energy here, right? I'm here for you. I'm here for myself. Like maybe it's a personal thing. Be patient. If you don't know what the stress is, what the anxiety is about right now, you probably just don't really know what it is. Be patient until you do. And then with all your might, once you identify it, attack and solve that problem. So that would be my biggest tip to Max 8 years ago.
Love it. Patience is a virtue. It's good.
Yeah, I never really got that. That took a long time, but it's a train that I'm just rocking with right now. I'm just on the. I just was talking about it with Megan recently. I was like, I don't know what the deal is, but I'm loving me some patience, and I'm just gonna ride this wave of patience for as long as I can. Cool, man. Thank you for asking such great questions. I rarely get asked these questions, and
I mean, we could definitely do a part 2 because I can always ask more questions, and I had some thoughts, but I was like, that's rabbit hole there. I was trying to keep it relatively focused, but
let's open it up to the viewers. Viewers, if y'all have any questions, holla in the comments, shoot a DM, do whatever you want to do. Happy to share more and maybe, apply any tips to your own situations.
Yeah. If there's anything we talked about or didn't talk about that you guys would like to maybe hear another podcast episode on, we could dive deeper into, let us know in the comments. We'll respond to everyone.